Hello, hello. I'm going to try something different here. I'm getting really frustrated with the timeline of the whole Trump mess. And so I wanted to look at the astrology of what's going on to see if it can help with the timing. I even printed stuff out, and because this can just look like a big mess to a lot of people, a big mess of symbols and, gosh, what does that mean? I actually even printed out pictures and pulled out my glue stick. So, we've got all kind of stuff. All right, so I've got a nice pile here. All right, I'm going to start with my clipboard here because I just want to explain just a couple of things, make it this as easy as possible. Because the thing about the way that I tell people about astrology is I assume that I'm dealing with people who, I don't know, have a life, who don't spend their free time reading book after book on how astrology and in the world and how it affects different things and how it must affect the kiddies. Okay, you can't stay there, sweetheart. That's the one place you can't stay. Go on, go on, go on, go on. It's like I don't want to. Go on. When it comes to the timing of something as huge in our history as a president leaving office, that's not a casual thing. That's not just one person interacting with another. This isn't just, you meet someone new and you want to know how you're going to get along. No, this is a whole different level of things. And when we're talking about things that are going to affect everybody, it really hits the zeitgeist, hits the kind of what everyone is experiencing. Basically what you have is you have the sun, and obviously this is not exactly how this works because the planets are actually just crazy distances away from each other, but you've got the different planets: Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune. Those are the major planets. Those are the planets. Pluto was downgraded a number of years ago because it's the same size as some of the other minor planets. Now, just for fun, let's do Mercury, Venus, Mars. Okay, Jupiter. The symbol for Jupiter looks like a 4. The symbol for Saturn looks like a 5. They're the 5th and 6th planets, but for some reason their symbols, Jupiter looks like a 4, Saturn looks like a 5. That's how I remember it. It's weird. It just is. And there is a more complicated symbol for Uranus, but I use this one because it's one of the accepted ones. And this little antenna-looking thing on the top, the man who discovered Uranus, his name was Herschel, and that's an H for Herschel. Well, it's also an H for Herschel. And then Neptune, you've got the trident. Pluto's, it's like even more it's another complicated thing, so usually most people just do that, which is a P and an L, like Pluto. Okay, so this is our solar system. Up until the 1800s, I believe, we only knew about out to Saturn. That was it. That was all we knew about. These became, especially from Mars, Mercury to Mars, it was the inner planets. These were the most personal, and as they zip around the sun very quickly compared to the others, they really affect the person. The symbol for the sun is a circle with a dot in the middle, and just for fun, the symbol for a moon is a crescent shape. Up until Uranus was discovered, Saturn was as far out as we knew, that we figured, okay, that was it. If you went back to ancient times and you started talking to someone about astrology, they would love to talk about astrology. It was very popular throughout history, but that's all they would talk about because they didn't know anything else. These are new, comparatively speaking. And usually when a new planet is discovered, it has an effect. It sort of colors the age. It ends up affecting the age, the era when it's discovered. Because these planets are moving very quickly around the sun, and these outer planets are moving very slowly. Farther out you go, obviously, the longer it takes for them to move. So from our perspective, way in here, this just is going forever. And of course, because Pluto is a planetoid, it's not a planet anymore. It has an elliptical orbit, it's not circular. I think in 1999 it was even closer to the sun than Neptune slightly. But the point of it is that if you want to talk about something that's going to affect the age, affect millions of people, what have you, you don't look in here. You don't look here, you look out here. Then the farther out, the better. For Pluto not even us having known about it for 100 years yet, we know quite a bit about how it affects astrology because it's a little powerhouse. And Pluto was the Roman name of Hades, god of the underworld. It's the plow. It plows through things. If you ever have Pluto about to hit your chart somewhere, you're in for quite a, I don't even know how to put this, it's the plow. It just plows through, and anything that isn't well established, like in a field, if there's a tree that's very well established, the plow isn't going to be able to touch it. But anything else that isn't well established, that is weaker, is just going to be completely destroyed. It's going to run through the field and take out anything that isn't strong so that new growth can start again and something stronger can grow. So that's Pluto. Up until very, very recently, in the grand scheme of things, Saturn was thought to be the outermost planet. And Saturn, with its rings, and for a long time thinking it was the outermost planet, Saturn has to do with structure. Think of the rings. It forms structure. There are other planets in our solar system that have rings, but Saturn's are the most beautiful, huge, elaborate. And that's what Saturn does. It has to do with forming things, whether it be putting up a fence or bringing an idea into the physical world as a thing. This pen started as an idea, but taking it from the idea and getting it all the way through to where I could hold it right now, that's Saturn. Okay, and as this pen or anything else, as it is, after it's done being used, it will decay, and the molecules will diffuse themselves into the surrounding area. It's losing form. Saturn, with the rings, forms things. It's Neptune, and think of Neptune, the watery depths. It diffuses things. It creates a fog. It's also very good for artists and storytellers because it has to do with fiction. Ideas, whole stories, they're not real, but they have things to teach you, and they're a means of expression, and that's important, and things of that nature. So these are really the key planets. We're going to talk about Saturn, the fences, the rings, the forming, Neptune, the diffuser, the fiction and the lies, and Pluto, which is the plow. P-L, plow. It's actually Pluto, but plow. I don't expect you to know all of these symbols offhand. Maybe you've seen some of the astrology symbols for people who are like, oh, what's your sign? So maybe you've seen certain signs. The one bit of astrology if you start here, if you start with this idea, you're going to go very, very far. And that idea, I'm going to draw another circle here, very bad circle, and I'm going to draw this circle with 12 slices, like a pie. Okay? All right, just going to do that. With extra emphasis on the because it's kind of cross shape in the middle. Okay? These are called the axes. Now, I'm not going to go into detail on this, but this has to do with where you were on the planet when you were born. Basically, you were inside your mother's energy field, and then when the instant you were born, you were kind of like a blank X-ray plate, for lack of a better way to describe it. But a completely brand new X-ray plate, and as soon as you moved outside of your mother's protective energy, it's like the universe went zap. And so you carry the astrological power of that moment throughout your life, okay? And this is how we represent it in Western astrology. Because this is the ascendant, this is what was coming up over the horizon when you were born, and this is the descendant, obviously, which was going down, and this is the midheaven. That's Latin. It's just like the IC down here is Latin. This is the midheaven. This is what was going on way out of reach, the other side. Okay, so you have some basic idea there. Don't go further into that unless you really want to. It gets very complicated with trying to picture the, this angle versus that angle. Forget it. All right, this is what you need to know. Ascendant, descendant, midheaven, and then it's just called the IC. These slices are called houses. They are numbered. It starts here, and for some reason it goes that way. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Why is this here and that there and this goes? Because it's just how somebody just decided that's what we're gonna do. Okay, that's what we're gonna do. The reason that it can be useful to know this, very useful to know this, is because when you first learn astrology, you're gonna save yourself a whole lot of grief and time and trouble if you learn this right here, because each of these houses is like, the first house is the house of Aries, and the second house is the house of Taurus, Gemini, Cancer, Leo, Virgo, Libra, Scorpio, Sagittarius, Capricorn. Capricorn, I always joke, Capricorn is the third of the earth signs. Taurus is an earth sign, so is Virgo, so is Capricorn. I think of it this way. Taurus grows, they're all earth signs, so like they form things, they make things. Taurus grows it. The whole Art Nouveau aesthetic, Neptune was out in Taurus. So you got the flourishes of all of this very garden aesthetic on everything. Taurus grows it. Virgo, over here, Virgo is, think of it this way, think of Japanese craftsmanship. That meticulous, beautiful, they don't necessarily always come up with a thing, or traditionally have not come up with necessarily the original ideas themselves, but holy cats have they refined it and made it beautiful. So Taurus grows it, Virgo crafts it, Capricorn makes it expensive. And that's why the symbol for Capricorn, like you can say, okay, the symbol for Sagittarius is an arrow. Sagittarius is the archer. And so it's an arrow. Okay, maybe I don't know what the M looking thing here is for, but I know a Scorpio has a stinger on their tail. So there's this stinging arrow here. Libra is the symbol is scales, carefully weighing things out. So this looks kind of like scales. Well, the symbol for Capricorn, it's like VS, but it's like that. And it depends where you are as to what exactly it looks like. But to me, it reminds me of like logos on expensive clothing. That's Capricorn all the way. This is very important to what we're going to talk about. Then we have Aquarius and Pisces. Okay, sorry if you can't see that N very well, but that's Capricorn. All right, this is what we're going to talk about. For instance, if I have something in a planet and it happens to fall in the, say, 8th house, it's going to have, whatever that is going to have it's going to have a little flavor of Scorpio energy in there. It is traditional. Each one of these signs is a ruling planet. I mean, a lot of people know that Leo's ruling planet is the sun. The Sun King is the ultimate, that's perfect for Leo. A couple of them share, because we don't have quite enough to go around, like Venus, Pluto, good old 4 Jupiter. Capricorn is Saturn. Aquarius is Uranus. Pisces is Neptune. Aries is Mars, god of war. Taurus is Venus. Gemini is Mercury, zipping around in his snazzy gold suit like the FTD flowers from back in the day. Cancer is ruled by the moon. If you learn just this, you're going to basically know most of what you need to know. Not all, of course, but you'll know most of it, because everything after this point is like a variation on a theme. Okay, for example, this just happens to be a chart, right? It doesn't matter who or what chart it is. You can see that you've got these big, strong axis lines. It's tilted a little bit in this one, but that's okay. And then you can see these numbers where it's numbered all the way around. In this chart, you have Mars. Got Mars in Sagittarius. All right. And it's in the 8th house. So that Mars, going back over here, 8, Scorpio, ruled by Pluto. So this Mars is always going to have a background flavor of Scorpio energy. That doesn't change that Mars is still rules Aries and is most comfortable in the 1st house over here. But that gives you, once you know this, then you already know, okay, it's not at home. This is its home. It's in a different house. It may or may not be in a different sign. Chances are that it is. So this Mars, which is how you do things, your force, how you just, pick up your spear, pick up your weapon, your thing, and you act. Mars is always going to Mars. Mars is going to Mars. It's just how it's going to be. But how that's going to come forward is going to be dependent on what constellation it was in when you were born, or when this thing happened, whatever this is about. Okay, let's go back to the thing at hand. Trying to figure out what's going on with, when is this Trump nightmare likely to end or come to a head, or is he going to leave, or is there something? Give us a hint. Also, these different signs, these different planets are related to the signs, and there's usually a color as well associated with each. Like Pluto is usually a blood red, whereas Aries is a bright red. Pisces is a dreamy kind of blue-green. Leo, which is ruled by the sun, is yellow or gold. And Capricorn is associated with the color black. On the good side, it makes really great things, physical things. If life came to be on Earth in these tidal pools of the ocean, and there was land and there was the deep sea, but there were these tidal pools. If there wasn't land, if there wasn't water formed, if it was all just a big foggy gas, if it was just a gas planet, well, there wouldn't be any tidal pools. So that allows things to happen. All right, so limitations are not always bad. They can be difficult, but they're not always bad. And Saturn rules Capricorn. Pluto rules Scorpio. Scorpio is the sign of extremes it's a very intense. Intensity is a word you will often use to hear with Scorpio. And if you know any Scorpios, boy, they can be intense. This is important because you're going to have to know about Pluto here. You can almost think of it that you're born at Aries. So you're born and you just have a sense of self, and you cry when you take your first breath, and you know the I am of the I am, I exist, I breathe, I eat. And you can always think of it that in a sense, these are kind of different parts of life that you go through until you get to Pisces. And Pisces is the last sign, generally thought of as the most of the spiritual of the signs. And the Pisces I know personally, yeah, they're some of the most spiritual people I know. And they, there's a running joke that they already have one foot on the other side, because they often are not the most social human beings. And some of them, not all, of course, but I laugh when I hear a Pisces say something like, I don't like people. It's almost like it's like they've been through all the signs, they've seen it all, they're done. I'm done. They're very attached to the spiritual. They're moving on. This is the house of the fourth house here. This wedge number 4 is home. Wedge number 5 is expression. Think of the Sun King expressing himself. 6 is day-to-day work. It's also health, but it's just the craftsman, day-to-day, working. Once you cross a descendant, once you have something attached to the descendant or above that, this starts dealing with other people. This is really about the self. This is the self and others up here, and how you relate to others. Usually, this is often considered the marriage house because it's the house of partnerships. The 7th house is these days it's where you get married. The 8th house is where you are completely vulnerable and you go down to the depths with your partner. It is about death and transformation. It is the phoenix rising from the ashes. It is the moment in the most intense, passionate relationship you'll ever have, where you're stripped and laid bare, and but it's not just a physical thing. It's this deep spiritual, but it's also there's danger and death involved with this going down into the underworld, and it's intense. It's an intense energy, an intense thing. And it's ruled by Pluto. Then you get Jupiter in Sagittarius here, which has to do with higher education, the law, travel. It has to do with really going beyond even just, this is the I, this is the kind of partnership, this is moving more out into the world. And then you get Capricorn. Capricorn is this axis right here, this midheaven axis. And the 10th house have to do with status. Back in the day, people actually, when an astrologer was looking at a chart to try to figure out when a woman was going to get married, they would look here, because getting married changed their status. So that's what that used to be, but now it has to do with work. At Capricorn, the symbol for Capricorn is a mountain goat. They look like sheep with really impressive horns, but it's the wildest thing, because you'll see them like halfway up the sheerest cliffs. They can find just these little tiny places to put their little hooves and just zip straight up these cliffs. It's seemingly no other animal can just walk up. Think of that with Capricorn too. Status, height. Capricorn rules skyscrapers. If you go look at the Instagram account of a Capricorn, I always look and it's like, okay, are the colors muted? Are there fresh flowers? Is there any Louis Vuitton luggage? Is there, are these little signs of wealth here and there? It's status. Aquarius has to do with friendship and technology, and then Pisces is the spirituality and the unconscious. So, if we're looking at these outer planets, because when the President of the United States leaves office, leaves before his term is up, and he's still alive, that's going to have a huge impact. That's going to be a big thing. That's not going to be just Venus was here or Mercury was doing something. Mercury, when it looks like it's going backwards, it's not. It's actually just going around the other side of the sun. But from our vantage point, when it looks like it's going backwards, that can affect communications. But what we're talking about is a major historical moment. Yes, we get Mercury in retrograde, or friend of a friend put it, Mercury in Gatorade. That's what she calls it. But you don't remember those. They crop up, they go away, they come up, they go away. We need to look at these outer planets. And also, what are some of the big things? There are a lot of little things that astrologers, I'm finding, are looking at, midpoints and all this, solar arcs and progressions to some extent, and, all this stuff. But something of this magnitude for our country is not going to be subtle, all right? And it's not just going to affect one person. So this is what I decided to do. I was going to look at what is the next major event where the outer planets are going to come together or come into an angle with another planet, or when's the next big thing in astrology? And it is January 12th, 2020. That is when Pluto's out here. Right? You have Pluto is sitting out in Capricorn. You have Saturn, which is also in Capricorn. And on this date, they're going to be in the exact same place. It's called a conjunction, which just means they're in the same place. And for what it's worth, not that you need this, but that's an aspect, and that is the symbol for a conjunction. It's like a Mars symbol without the end on the arrow. It takes Pluto something like, I want to say it's 248 years to go around the sun. It's slow. It's very slow. Saturn goes around the sun, I want to say every 29 years. So compared to Pluto, yeah, it's just zipping along, but it's not like, us. Obviously, it takes 1 year for us to go around the sun. 29, that's quite a magnitude of difference. All right, so it's not zipping around. So Saturn is going to come up, and from our perspective, where we are looking out, Saturn is going to have Pluto right behind it. Probably not the best way to draw this, but it will, from our vantage point, Saturn and Pluto will look like they're in the exact same place. That's a conjunction. It doesn't happen very often. And it happens about every 29 years. But you start looking at when did it last happen in a particular sign, and then, the last time it happened in Capricorn was, I believe, 1777. Gosh, what was going on in 1777? Was there something going on in America or France and starting in 1779? So this could be a big deal. And this is the thing that astrologers are talking about. They usually do it in order. So it's Saturn, you'd see it written out as Saturn conjunct Pluto in Capricorn. Excuse my weird little symbol there. And so when I see this, I know what that means. And astrologers know what that means. And it may seem like it's impossible to learn some of these symbols, but it's just repetition. You just see them often enough, you start recognizing them, especially when they're actually drawn properly and not like this. But anyway. Now, what that means, if we go back, Saturn, remember, it forms things, but it's also quite dour. I mean, it's not a party sign. It's not the party planet. Jupiter's the party planet. Venus is the party planet. A party planet. Saturn, not the party planet. Saturn rules time. The colors for it is black. In the house of Capricorn, I mentioned that if you go look at someone who's got a lot of Capricorn energy in their chart, they almost unconsciously want to include little symbols of wealth or some symbols of status, of whatever pond they're in. They want to kind of be the big fish in that pond. That's a lot of hard work. Capricorns are the workaholics of the zodiac. I was fortunate enough to date one many years ago, and yes, serious workaholism. But if you have a prominent Saturn in your chart, maybe you're used to that energy. Okay, that's fine. Problem is that it's going to be in the same, from our vantage point, and it looks like they're in the same place, which means that energy is combined, conjunct. And so what's going to combine with this dour, status-seeking, hardworking, nose to the grindstone energy of Capricorn? Remember that Yuletide, solstice, the darkest night of the year, Christmas, all those other holidays that have to do with the darkest night of the year. All of Christmas falls in falls in Capricorn. Capricorns are the workers who are. It's almost like they're carrying the light of the sun into the. They've got the hard work of carrying that through, to hand it off to Aquarius to move it forward through the. It's not the same kind of death you get over with Scorpio, but it's that hard working, nose to the grindstone, keep the family together, keep the clan together through the depth of winter kind of thing. So not a party. Pluto is the plow. It hits something, it starts digging in to that sign usually. Usually it has the biggest impact when it enters a new sign. When it goes from, let's see, in here it's sitting in Capricorn. If Pluto was to go into Aquarius, it usually has a big impact. This is the chart for the Saturn-Pluto conjunction on the 12th of January 2020 in Washington, D.C. And it's just sheer coincidence that the moment that Saturn, see this kind of 5-ish looking symbol, and Pluto here, PL, they are going to be in the exact same, not just degree, but minute, even down to the second. They're going to be perfectly conjunct at noon. Matter of fact, I even put this at 11:59 a.m. because in some of these programs, if you put in noon, it's just a way of saying you don't know the birth time or you don't know the time of the event. So I just knocked it back 1 minute. But this is going to happen at high noon in Washington, D.C. Sunday. It's going to be on a Sunday, 12th of January, 2020. These two planets are going to affect each other before then. When planets are near each other, they affect each other. There's something called an orb, which is how close. You've got this is 360 degrees, and you've got 30 degrees in each sign. Something like the moon here, the luminaries, the moon and the sun, they have what's called an orb of up to about 10 degrees. So anything that's going to be, say, from about here to about there, if there was any planet or anything that was within that, like a planet transiting through or whatever it was, this would influence it. Obviously, the closer into actual exact 17 degrees, 13 minutes of Leo it is, the stronger, but still, it's going to have an effect. It's called an orb. Smaller planets, like, say, a Mars, and different astrologers use slightly different numbers, but something like Mars is going to have more like a 5 degree in either direction kind of orb. So Saturn and Pluto, their orbs are probably at 5 degrees in either direction. So as Saturn's coming up on Pluto, it's going to start having an effect before they're exactly conjunct, precisely in the same spot. When Pluto hits a new sign, it's the plow, it comes in, wham, right? Pluto, because it has an elliptical orbit, instead of being circular, it's more like this. All right. Well, it's kind of been, for the last 100 years, it's been kind of on the shorter end of that. So it's actually been changing signs relatively quickly. And it'll reach a point where it will start, because if you look at it this way, if it's moving along, it's going to take a lot longer to go through this sign than to go through this sign, if that makes any sense. But here's the thing. It tends to affect kind of that whole time period. This is Cancer. In 1914, Pluto entered Cancer, which is the big mom of the zodiac. It has to do with these young men who thought they were becoming men. Boys becoming men. War is a rite of passage. Well, they thought they were going off to war because that's what their forefathers had done, and and then they got there and it was the biggest nightmare because the cruel realities of war became nightmarish. In 1939, Pluto entered Leo. Pluto came in, and this is the idea of Leo is kings, monarchs, the autocrats, the people in charge, the dictators. Basically, it entered the sign and it kicked up the ugliest rock it could find, and that was Hitler. He was the worst, and he had started coming into power before that. But lo and behold, Pluto enters a new sign. I'm not going to go through. I won't go through the whole thing, but I want to say it was 1984. This is Scorpio. In 1984, Pluto entered Scorpio. Basically, they discovered AIDS. They discovered what this virus that they'd been fighting and couldn't fight, what it was. And at the time, there was no cure. It was absolutely deadly. Death and transformation. And yeah, that sort of, if you survived it, you'd show the effects from, say, all the medications, or that they were able to start cobbling together. But it was a real struggle that had to do with Scorpio themes. So in 2008, Pluto entered Capricorn. It's hard to have high status when you've just lost your house. And having a house is a sign of status to people who've never had a house before and whatnot. All right, and as Pluto has moved through Capricorn, that's what this fun little symbol is. It always looks interesting. Pluto's still in Capricorn, and Scorpio has to do, again, with this laid-bare intimacy. And just so you know, in the best of my memory, 2024, Pluto is going to enter Aquarius. And Aquarius rules its humanitarian issues. And that's my weird little ampersand. And here's the kicker: technology. So we'll talk about this in the future, but in 2024, I personally, I would expect some horrendous virus or computer virus or something. But anyway, that's for the future. But this is first. And so at some point in here, it was inevitable that Pluto was going to kick up a really ugly rock. The good side of it did come out when, yes, we had to deal with the Great Recession, the housing market collapsing, but also the first African-American man became president of the United States. Status. Pluto plowing through saying, oh, this is the way you think it's always been done? No. Well, this is what's actually possible. And if you really were an egalitarian society, anybody can become president. No, really, not just, telling children that and it not being true. No, it's actually true. But as Scorpio plowed through, it kicked up Donald Trump, and here we are. So, Pluto's out there doing its thing. Well, here comes Saturn. And I didn't realize until I ran this chart that not only are we dealing with the high noon thing, which is just bizarre, but I didn't realize until I ran this chart. Do you see all of these things crammed together right here? It's like, goodness, what is that? Okay, because it's like right here you've got, okay, this is the symbol for Venus, and this is the line. All right, so that's where Venus is, and Venus is at 28 degrees, 42 minutes. Fair enough. Well, what is this? Okay, this is what is called a stellium. Now, a stellium is when you have 3 or more planets basically in the same place, within a few degrees of each other. Well, this it's not even, gosh, from 2150, which is almost 22, to 2314. I mean, we're talking a degree and a quarter. I mean, talk about these things being in the same place. And a stellium is like a super conjunction, because you have everything. You don't just have energy blending together. You have all of that energy amassing, and it's concentrated. And until I ran this, now you can just ignore this symbol here, because that's not what we're talking about here. It's an asteroid, it doesn't matter. You've got Mercury, Saturn, got Pluto, and I didn't realize until I ran this that, actually I probably should have written at the top, you've also got the Sun. It's right there. It's that time of year. It's mid-January, late Capricorn. It's all there. There is so much power in this spot. It's scary. Mercury is communications, how we communicate. Saturn is, oh gosh, forming limits, forming things, solidifying, that sort of thing. Pluto is the plow, rebirth, regeneration, but really it's death and rebirth. And then of course you've got the Sun, which is light and power and the center. And all right, so you have all of this together. And if someone came to me and they had this chart, it would be like, oh my goodness, do you have, that's so much Capricorn energy that because it's in that's where it is. It's like, have you had like a Louis Vuitton tattoo put on you? Or have you like surgically implanted a Gucci tag, on your, your arm or something? I mean, it's just, I would expect this person to just be super Capricorn, super extra Capricorn. And also with a Leo moon, I would, you've got that grandiosity, that need, that emotional need for the grandiosity and the leadership and so as a person, if this was a person, and the person, because there's going to be somebody with this chart or something very close to it, they're going to be forces of nature. They're going to look very practical. They have Taurus there. Stellium in Capricorn, in Capricorn's house. And then you've got Mars in the house of Scorpio, which is also intensity. This is not going to be a pushover. This is not going to be a wussy person, a meek and mild milquetoast. Do not think that you're going to have to train this person to not be a wallflower. This person is not going to be a wallflower. The person born when this happens is, yeah. Anyway, it's a big deal. That's a lot of power. All right? This is the nearest thing that's happening. There are other things happening in future between 2020 and 2024. But this is so powerful, I decided this is what we should look at. Okay, having gone through all of that, let's simplify everything. Let's just completely simplify everything down. Because if nothing else, if you walk away with no other information, walk away with this. Okay? If someone shows you a full astrology chart, they just come along and they just happen to show you an astrology chart, and you're like, yeah, I don't know those symbols, I don't know what all that stuff is, I don't know what this means and that means and the other thing means. On modern astrology charts, Western astrology charts, it will tend to show you red lines and blue lines when it's showing the aspects between planets. Now, obviously, if you have you have two things in the same place, that's an aspect as well. Okay? And it can be good or bad. It's usually good. Any aspect can be good or bad. It just depends. But I have found that if you just look at a chart, first thing you look at look at how much red is in this and how much blue is in this. All right, let's do it this way. Red, blue. Actually, this is a better red. Blue, red. All right, let's draw a circle. All right, I know it's an oval, but pretend it's a circle, okay? If you have, all right, and this is center. Actually, that's the Earth, but. All right, let's say that you have a planet here. I'm just gonna pick random symbols for planets. You've got a planet here. You've got a planet here, okay? There is, on a circle, where there are 360 degrees in the circle, the difference between here and here is going to be 90 degrees. That's a square. That's what it's called. It's called a square, 90 degrees. You have, let's say you have a planet here, and directly across, let's say you have a planet here. All right, so this is 180 degrees. They're directly opposite each other, okay? That is, that's just called opposition. They're opposite each other. That one's really straightforward. Okay. All right, let's say that we have a planet here, okay? And let's say that down here, what have I not done? Let's do, okay. Let's say I've got another planet right there. All right, and the distance between them is 120 degrees. That's called a trine. And you can also have something that is half of that, which is 60 degrees. Let's say it's the moon. The way that they show this in the actual charts, like this, rather than having everything running through the center and confusing the issue, they draw a direct line. They'll draw a red line. This tends to be, a square tends to be tense. Some people think of it as friction. I think of it as a live wire. It's like the aspect between it is always on, and it can be too much, and that's why you get grating and, you know, little electric shocks and problems. Or you can't have problems until you get used to it, or you find some way to deal with it. But so they show it as red because it usually causes difficulties. All right. Oppositions, they will often show as red. Yeah, I think they do in this program. They will often show as red. Not always. I don't know that it really deserves to be red, but they show it as red. Just a red line directly between the two, and this red line here. And they get rid of all these other lines I've shown you. An opposition, opposite planets, they're like, it's like two planets on a seesaw. When one, let's say that you and your spouse, you both have, your suns are opposite. Well, you're going to have to accept that during your marriage, one of you will, you know, they'll maybe give something up, or they'll do something, it will raise you up, raise your sense of self up. But there are times when you're going to have to let their sense of self also go up while you're not feeling the same. You know, on the good side, it means that you're not just always, it's not just always going to be static and the same, but you have to accept this kind of happening. And how well you can accept that explains how well the relationship's going to go. Okay? That's an opposition. The more positive aspects, the trine, which actually they just do a straight line, this trine is the most pleasant aspect you can have. It's like a gentle stream of energy. It's to the point where it is, if you have nothing but trines in a relationship chart with somebody, you'll be bored. I mean, it's so comfortable and it's so easy. You'll often see blue lines for the 60 degrees as well, which is called a sextile. And it's like a trine, but it's more energizing. So ignore the black. You'll see how these, all right, so on this stellium is square Uranus. This Venus is roughly square Mars. Okay, so you've got red there. But you've also got blue. A long blue is probably a trine, and a shorter blue is probably a sextile. But you can see how, by just looking at a chart, you can get a very quick sense. There's some other things in there too, but really just look at the red and the blue for most programs I've seen, and you can get a sense of, is there more gentle, cooperative energy, or is there more tension and movement and friction and that sort of thing. This is where it gets interesting. Now that you know all of that, let's just go through this stack of charts, and we're just to start with, we're just going to look at the red and the blue, right? Get a sense. What's it like? All right. For example, my chart is on the inside here. This is my chart. I actually cut out my personal information, but my chart is on the inside here, and this is the chart there. This is two charts together, and on all of these, this outside ring with the red, see this big grouping of planets there near an MC midheaven? It's this chart. So all of these charts are going to be these people or events on the inside circle, and then this moment, this conjunction, what's going to be in the sky, is on the outer ring of the two. Okay? So when this happens, at this moment, when this conjunction is exact, it doesn't really do much. It doesn't really affect me. It's not really, I mean, Venus is going to be over here, Mars is going to be here. That'll affect something in my chart. Jupiter will be across from my moon, but this isn't really going to rock my world. Okay? So I just wanted to show you that that's what's possible, because that isn't what happens in these others. All right, but that's what can happen. It's just sitting out there. It's not really going to have a massive effect on my life. Okay. The chart for the U.S., there's argument about, what is the exact chart? What is the best time? Was it? But the most often used chart is called the Sibley chart. It was made by a man named Sibley. And it is for what he believes is the moment of the Declaration of Independence, when it had all its signatures or whatever it was that really was, this is the moment, okay? And he had it at 5:10 p.m., 4th of July, 1776 in Philadelphia. All right, and I've got a little picture here of the signing, the famous painting of the signing of the Declaration of Independence. Okay. So, on this outer ring, let's start with the outer ring. Let's look around. Let's find that stellium. Here's the stellium by its midheaven. Okay? Is it affecting the USA chart? Our country's chart? Yes, it is. It is, oh goodness, because it's a whole bunch of things. It's a stellium. It's not just one thing, which would create one line. It's a stellium, so it's creating a whole bunch of lines. And this blue to Neptune, but red across to our Mercury. It's our communications. So communication can get dicey. Up, down. But how we view things, the stories we tell, or negatively, perhaps some lying, because it's Trump we're talking about. You can see that there are some other single lines all over, but what I'm really looking forward to is this. How is it really affecting red and blue lines into the chart? So this is kind of a mixed bag. Okay, let's see what else we've got here. The Orange Fiera himself. Okay, now just glancing at this chart, and if all I told you was, okay, look at the red, look at the blue. Blue is positive, red is more difficult. Let's say blue is easy, red is difficult. Holy cats, look at that. Look at that gargantuan red line. And then I look and it's like, okay, the outer ring, oh, there's the stellium, the midheaven. So that's what this is. All of the, and then this is Trump's Venus and his Saturn. But that really does affect him right there. I happen to know that the 11th house is the house of Aquarius, which is the house of friendships. It's not marriage, it's more like, yeah, friends, Congress. It's people kind of on a level together, that kind of thing. So this is why quite often you'll get like the house of Leo might be the president, or something like, or Capricorn for status, but you'll get the 11th house for Congress, because you have so many people on roughly the same level. Well, in his 11th house of friends, that's not pleasant. That's not pleasant at all. There's some good stuff too, but goodness. I mean, in this aspect, because you've got 2 planets here, and ignoring Ceres, that asteroid, you've got 4 planets there. Well, 3 planets and the sun, the luminary. But still, for now, we'll just call it 4 planets. This is an aspect between 6 planets. That's a lot of energy. That's a whole lot of effect. All right, let's see what's next. All right, this is for Donald Trump's first term. They create the Trump inauguration chart. That's when this will talk about how the term's going to go and major events that may happen. For Trump's inauguration, which was on Friday, 20th of January, 2017, at noon. That's when he took the oath and whatnot. Okay, let's look. All right, here's the stellium by its midheaven. Oh, it's kind of close to, where is that sun? That sun is at 0, it's at almost 1 degree Aquarius. And this is back at 22, so it's weak. It's a weak effect, but there is there. And the Pluto, okay, so, but look at this. Look at this red. And this is falling in the 9th house, which is the house of Sagittarius, is also the house of higher education and law, idealism. So this is falling into the house of law and idealism, and it's just plowing and limiting and structuring and communicating and illuminating that. And it's forming stressful aspects to Jupiter, which is the lawgiver, which rules the 9th house, and Uranus, which is the rebel. All right, what's next here? Okay, so I was wondering what's going to happen to Vlad at this particular moment during this conjunction. Well, there's the stellium by the midheaven. Look at all of that red. And across from Uranus. But there's some blue to this Jupiter. This Jupiter's trining. Jupiter is a greater bringer of benefits, and it can be lucky. And so there is some positive lucky energy flowing. But there's, my goodness, and that's his sun Goodness, because he himself had his, when he was born, he has a stellium. He has a grouping of planets. Sun, Saturn, Neptune, Mercury. Whew, that's pretty powerful. And that's going to be affected. So it's going to affect Trump. It's going to affect Vladimir Putin. Both fairly negatively. All right, what's next? Let's see how it's going to do to Pence. Not a lot. Okay, here's the stellium. There's the midheaven. Well, let's see, what aspects it forming a sextile, so an energizing positive aspect to his Jupiter. Just that's good. And then there's this weird green line. What is that? And it's going down to, gosh, that's his sun, his moon, and his Mercury, his self, his emotional needs, and his sense of communication. This is huge. So what is this weird green line? And this is, I think this is the only time this is really a big issue. The big green line is called an inconjunct. An inconjunct, instead of being opposite, which would be 180 degrees, it's 30 degrees over, so it's at 150 degrees. And what that, because it's not opposite, it's not seesawing, and it's not, it's like it's not, it can't quite trine, it can't quite this, it can't quite that. It basically, at 150 degrees, the planets, it's almost like they're aware of each other, but they can't integrate. They're separate. It isn't like, well, okay, this has no aspect to this. Well, in that case, they're just oblivious to each other. Or they're not, there's no way. But this, they're very much aware of each other, but it's the sphere and the square hole, when you were a kid. And you're not going to be able to put that in the... So when this happens, while it's very tense for, say, Donald Trump, his boss, for Pence, it's going to be kind of watching it from the outside. All right, let's see what else is in here. How about for Barr? All right, there's the stellium, there's the midheaven. This, definitely red to Venus, but there's also quite a bit of blue to Mercury and Mars. And there are also, these other things in the chart are forming aspects. So it kind of diffuses the energy a little bit. And, you do have an inconjunct, but it's not, but we're really focused on what is this doing to the chart. It's doing some positive things, it's doing some more negative things. It's kind of a mixed bag. I guess we'll have to see, because what I found with this grouping, this three, I just want to say here quickly, there's an expression that we use today, modern day, which I believe relatively soon is going to be considered a sexist term or a sexist insult. And we're not going to use it anymore. But for just the sake of modern slang and attempt at trying to find some humor in all of this, and being a woman myself, I'm going to use this term. It's not a swear word, but I'm going to use this term just for illustrative purposes of the kind of people I'm talking about here. Okay. What I have here are what I consider the three executive douchebags, or we could just call them jerks. The three executive jerks. Barr, Giuliani's working with Trump, and then Pompeo. As opposed to the congressional douchebags, the three congressional douchebags, which are later, the congressional jerks. Anyway, so this is kind of, okay, so that's there's some positive energy there for Barr. For Giuliani, it's, in conjunct and another obscure, it's like it really doesn't affect him, which makes me wonder if he's more out of the picture by then. And then you have Pompeo, who has his sun, his Mars and his Mercury in the same place. So his force, his outward force, and his communications. So all of that's together. But beyond that, there's one sextile sort of here, but it's not quite exact. It's not actually coming off of this. So it definitely affects right there. in this ninth house of law, but to some extent it's not really affecting anything else, which makes me wonder if he's going to lose influence or be out of the executive branch by then. All right. Thought I'd look at Sean Hannity. If this conjunction turned out to be, the big thing, the big push that got Trump out of the White House, would this affect Hannity? It's like, okay, so here's that stellium by the midheaven, and no, it's not affecting him. It's not connecting with anything. And he's got Saturn over here, he's got Mercury over there, and I guess the Mercury is in the ballpark. 17, it's about 5-6 degrees away. It's communications basically at work. It's going to affect him, but it's not going to be in his face. Matter of fact, his sun is at 8 Capricorn. Jupiter is at 9 Capricorn. Yeah, if anything, Jupiter is going to be on top of his sun, which is going to make him bigger, louder, sometimes a bit of a blowhard. It is the biggest gas giant. It often promises more than it can deliver. It makes him important. So by this point, if this is when the big change is going to happen, how it will affect Hannity based on this chart is that it will help him at work. His communication is what he does for a living. And his 10th house sun, which is the house of work status, if you're a workaholic, with Jupiter expanding things right there in the sun, it's going to be good business for him. By that point, who knows, maybe he will have turned against the president. Don't know. So that's what I'm trying to go through and compare the different, how is this going to affect the different people? So we can maybe start taking guesses as to what kind of event this may be. All right, so Ivanka. Is this going to affect Ivanka Trump? Holy cats. Here's that big stellium by the MC. It is, all right, her, I'm not gonna ignore this, that these two lines match. This isn't her exact birth time. Apparently that is not known. But this is still where it is in the sky, and these planets are still where they are in her chart, in her birth chart. Saturn, Mercury, Jupiter, Pluto, all together in Libra. And all of this is squaring. So remember, we've got 4 planets here, and she's got 4 planets there. This is 8 planets, all friction, live wire, overloaded tension. Yeah, that doesn't look like fun. So I would think this is going to affect her a lot more than, say, Pompeo or Barr or what have you, because that's a lot of power. All right, let's check her hubby, Jared. It's going to come down on him like a ton of bricks. Look at this. This one doesn't have lines. We don't know his birth time either. We don't need to for this. His sense of self. He's already got Pluto just past his sun, which really digs up your sense of self, really plows through your sense of self. But this whole stellium is landing right on his sun, his sense of self. There's his communications right there. And squaring his own Pluto, his own power, depth of power and transformation. But it's that tension-filled energy there. And you'll see there's no blue coming off of that. It's conjunction and squares. And it's right on top of his sense of self. Goodness. All right. Son Donald Fiora Jr. What I found interesting about this chart, look for this. There's the stellium by the midheaven. Is it affecting the rest of the chart? Yes. Trines, sextiles. It's all blue. This conjunction is going to affect him in good ways. I mean, yes, there are some red lines in other places, but here, which makes me think, all right, well, if that was what would happen, that would be bad for Trump, bad for Ivanka, bad for Kushner. Not necessarily the worst thing in the world for Junior. Well, if eldest son was suddenly in full possession of the family business. That's what I thought. This is supposedly his accurate birth time, which would mean, if that's true, then this stellium is falling just inside his second house, which is the house of Taurus, which is the house of values and valuables. This is your money. Something to think about there. All right. Then we get, oh yes, the 3 congressional douchebags. We've got Matt Gaetz, we've got Devin Nunes, and Jim Jordan. But let's start with Mr. DUI himself. If something big happens on that date, stellium, is it going to affect Matt Gaetz? And you come down here and, again, like that other chart, all squaring his sense of power, his sense of ability to transform himself to yeah, that's not good, because there's no blue. There's no conjunction, there's no blue, it's just negative, and it's affecting his power. And if there's one thing that congressional people really don't like, is when you mess with their power. So, that's what I got for Matt Gaetz. Devin Nunes. I'd say the whole books are going to be written about Devin Nunes, but good grief, who would want to read a whole book about Devin Nunes? Stellium, midheaven. There is positive sextile to his Venus. Venus is what and how you love. Okay. Maybe, who knows, maybe it'll be good for his marriage. I don't know. But all of this is actually where these little lines are here. This Jupiter is kind of way out of being affected. It's too far out. But this is all coming in here and squaring his Uranus. And Uranus is how you, it's your originality, your rebelliousness, your love of the new, the different, the technology, his extremes is maybe even like Tea Party extremes, ideas that other people don't hold. Yeah, that's not going to go well. Maybe he doesn't do so well and he goes home to his wife. I don't know. This is what we're trying to put together. All right, Mr. I am fatally allergic to wearing a jacket, and I don't care if kids are abused under my watch. Stellium, midheaven, coming off of it, red. 2, his moon the moon isn't, we don't know his exact time of day, or exact time of birth, and so his moon's going to be in this area, but luminaries, the sun and the moon have a bigger orb, there's a bigger range of influence, so it's going to be in this area, and Jupiter is right there, which is your luck, your expansion, positive outlook, your travels, your ability to be that kind of jovial. Even the term jovial comes from Jove, which is another name for Jupiter, the god. This is going to happen, and it's all tension to Jordan's emotions and his sense of being puffed up and important. All right, so next let's look at a few more people on the periphery, because I would think the center would be Trump, Pence, Barr, all of those people right in the center. How is this going to affect Melania? And if this is the time at which things get, her husband, say, gets even kicked out of the White House, what would happen here? There's a stellium. Look at this. Look at the trines. Look at the blue. Look at the blue coming off of this. It's trine her Pluto, which is her sense of power, and then you've got trine to Mercury, her helping her speak freely, open up, giving her power, which could mean she's out of here. I mean, that's what my first thought was. I started laughing when I saw this. I was like, yeah, that's a whole lot of blue. That's a whole lot of blue. it doesn't look like a bad day for her. There are obviously, again, there are some tense aspects elsewhere, but it's really because this is such a huge powerhouse. It's these connections that are going to really have the punch. Okay, so I figured, all right, Nancy Pelosi. How would that affect Nancy Pelosi? And I'm looking, there's the stellium. I thought Melania was going to be happy. Look at this. To Neptune. It's in its home sign of Pisces, and it's so happy there. And it's one of the reasons why, as a culture, because it's an outer planet, it's affecting the whole culture. And it's why people like, and not just Donald Trump, lie their tuchuses off and get away with it, because lies and deceit, and that's the bad side of Neptune. And it's home, so it is, it's Neptune is in Pisces, it's in the sign it rules. It's happy, it's come home, it's taken its shoes off, it's undone its tie, it's, in the ratty socks, putting on its pajamas. So that's a lot of what's going on with the Trump era, but look at all that blue. Coming down here too, she has her own stellium, her Venus, her Mars, and her Uranus. And this is a lot of her power. She can be forceful, but also keep her femininity. And then she is willing to be the maverick, the originator, the first female Speaker of the House. And this is sending positive energy back and forth. All right, lastly, I pulled up Adam Schiff, stellium, right here. Okay, that's just an asteroid. Saturn's here, a little bit out of the way. This is red. All right, what's coming off here is red across from Mercury. So when this happens, what that would say is that it would affect his communications. And I explained earlier that opposition, 180-degree opposition, is kind of... So basically, he's just going to be very careful with what he says. Okay, these are the things that are happening. This is how I'm going to communicate, and it's this kind of thing. So if we put that all together, if we put all of that together, all right, so what are we left with? That during this rare, very, very powerful conjunction of 4 different planets in one spot, which is just a huge powerhouse, it's going to have a very stressful effect on the president, his first term in office. Vlad isn't gonna like all of it. He's still got some luck in there, but that's ugly. Pence is going to be quietly behind the door of the Lincoln bedroom, just trying to, don't notice me. Barr's going to be stressed but in his element for some reason. So probably legal wrangling. Could be. Giuliani is not really involved. He's just kind of looking at it from a distance. The way I joke about 2 ships passing in the night, supposedly that's a reference to, someone having a fling or something. But to me, I always joke that, oh yeah, I have that a lot. There's a ship way over there, and there's me on this ship over here, and it's dark out, and I think there's a figure, and I can kind of wave, and they think they can see me. So they wave to ships passing in the night. That's how it is in my life. Well, that's in conjunct, So for Pompeo, it's going to hit his pride, his manliness, and his sense of communication. So, but it's not spreading out from there. It's not doing other things in the chart. So I wonder how much he would be involved. I wonder if he'd even still be in that position. Hannity, I would look at this and I would say that he is going to have given up on Trump by then, perhaps. If either that or this looks like a newsman who's moved on. Moving on, next thing. Ivanka, that's a whole lot of stress. That's a whole lot of stress. Kushner, yeah, that's ugly. That's ugly. There's a little bit of blue, but there's not much to mitigate that. And Junior looking pretty happy. Everybody else is miserable except the heir apparent of the family business. Things not going well for Gates, which I will admit makes me rather pleased. Nunes, things not going well for Nunes. Things not going well for Jim Jordan. Things going extremely well for Melania. Some stress to her lucky Jupiter, which, you know, she doesn't want to be president. She doesn't want she doesn't want that job, but oh, that's some good energy. That's some very good energy. And then other people, like the chairman of the Intelligence Committee, just being very careful about what they're saying. Just very careful. So if you put all of this together, it's a big deal coming up to it because things will affect each other as it comes together. You know, it's not just like, okay, exactly at noon on that day, that's the only, you know, something's going to happen exactly that moment. You know, it could be a few days before, a few days after. It could be, you know, but that's the strongest effect of this. I think of them as like a really strong ocean currents. And these are big currents, big energetic currents. All right, so January 12th, 2020, it's on a Sunday, high noon in Washington, D.C., and it's all happening in the house of status. In other parts of the world, this will be happening in other houses, which rule other parts of the life. But that's when I think we need to really focus on. And I think that's the best candidate that I've seen so far. There are other things that use more minor aspects, but this is the big one. This is the biggest aspect that's going to happen for a while. This is the 500-pound gorilla. All right, we'll see what happens. But we're going to be fine. I mean, like even Melania's going to be happy, and Pelosi's going to be happy, and you know, if they're happy, chances are, so we will be too. All right. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for putting up with this. I really wanted to look at this information, and I really wanted to share what I'd found. So thank you so much for your patience sitting through this. All right. And hang in there. There are good days ahead, and we are going to be okay. All right. Thank you.